All right, so we are continuing today with text structures, and we are going to be looking at two science passages, okay? So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at this close reader habits. All right, so it says when you reread the articles, underline details that tell what each passage is about, and circle words and phrases that suggest the text structure. So I'm actually going to be underlining the details, and I will go ahead and circle the word or phrase that suggests the text structure, okay? So, our title, Why Are the Oceans Salty? By Anupa Desai. For much of history, it was a mystery why the oceans were salty. Different cultures, assuming that the oceans began as fresh water and only later became salty, came up with their own explanations. The Vikings related a story of a sailor dropping a magical salt grinder to the bottom of the ocean. People in the Philippines told of a giant who carried sacks of salt from island to island, but then accidentally dropped them all in the sea. Other cultures had similar stories to explain the cause of the ocean's saltiness. Scientists eventually figured out the truth. The stories were correct in one way. The amount of salt in the ocean has increased over time. Where did all the new salt come from? From the land. Most rocks contain salt. Over millions of years, the forces of wind, rain, and ice break down the rocks and release the salts. Rainfall carries the salts to rivers, and the rivers carry the salts into the oceans. As a result, the ocean is salty. So I have underlined all of the details that are important in this passage, and if you notice, I circled as a result. This tells us that the purpose of this passage is it's a cause and effect, okay? So the cause of the rocks breaking down and the salt being coming out of the rocks by the forces of nature, they get released into the ocean. Thereby, the ocean is salty, okay? All right, next passage. All right, again, we're going to remind ourselves about the close reader habits. So I will be underlining the details that tell what each passage is about, and I will circle the words and phrases that structure the text structure. All right, so we're going to start with the title, Oceans and Seas, by Richard Green. Some people use the word ocean and sea interchangeably, but these words refer to different things. An ocean is an enormous body of salt water, such as the Pacific or the Atlantic. In contrast, a sea is a smaller body of salt water, such as the Mediterranean Sea between Africa and Europe. Oceans are so large that people view them as surrounding the continents. The opposite is true for seas. They are surrounded by other larger geographical features. Some seas are entirely encircled by ocean. The Sargasso Sea in the northern Atlantic is an example of this. Other seas, such as Hudson Bay in Canada, are enclosed by some sides by ocean and other sides by land. Finally, a few seas, such as the Caspian in Asia, are completely landlocked within continents. Despite their differences, however, all seas have two things in common. They are made of salt water, and they are smaller than the oceans. All right, so as you noticed, I underlined the details, and I circled our text structure phrase in contrast, which gives us a clue on what our passage is about. So this passage is a compare and contrast. So we are comparing oceans to seas, but we're also comparing the different kinds of seas. All right, so oceans are bigger, seas are smaller, and there's a lot of different seas. But oceans surround the continents, whereas seas tend to be surrounded by other things that are larger than them. All right, so if you have questions, please let me know.